Hey there, everyone. Welcome into the show. I wanted to bring you this show today to bring you up to date on what's happening on the economy, on the stimulus front, on the minimum wage front, what President Biden and members of the Democratic Congress are doing this morning. So welcome into the show. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and that little bell notification so you'll never miss when we go live. We do our show usually Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern time, where you can join us live. So a couple of big moves overnight from Democratic-controlled House of Representatives on the stimulus front. This is exciting news because that $1.9 trillion stimulus package is going full steam ahead. We didn't know if it was going to happen or not because earlier in the day, Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, ended up throwing in a whole bunch of different procedural things that was going to hold things up in the Senate. That didn't stop Democrats. They were actually able to move over to the House of Representatives and move forward with the budget reconciliation process with very little Republican support. So this means now that they can go full steam ahead. Now they're up against the clock. As if you've watched my show for any length of time, you know what a deadline they're facing over the next few weeks, because next week they're off. Then they would come back at the end of February and they would have to put in place this bill within a small amount of time. And they're up against that March 14th deadline when unemployment benefits dry up. So they really ideally have to get this thing on the president's desk by March 7th for him to sign. Now, what's going to happen over the next few days? Well, here's what will happen is that while they are home, each member of Congress is going to get a Sharpie. And they're going to take their little black Sharpie and they're going to go through sort of line by line by line, deciding what they want in, what they want out of this budget. And are they going to have pork projects that they will add in? Are they going to want more expansion of, hazard pay for certain workers? What will be in this thing? And that really is what's going to be dealt with over the next few weeks. But the president came out last night after the House of Representatives moved forward with this $1.9 trillion stimulus package, saying he wants to take the fast track on this process. And now it will be in the hands of government to get this thing done because so many people are hurting. So here was the president last night speaking alongside Janet Yellen at the White House. This was an important moment to watch the new Treasury Secretary. And she, of course, has been pushing for a bold, big stimulus. This is going to be interesting to see how big this thing actually is, because we have some updates on a second phase of this stimulus in just a second. But let's listen to the president.
We're still in the teeth of this pandemic. In fact, January was the single deadliest month of the whole pandemic. We lost nearly 100,000 lives. I know some in Congress think we've already done enough to deal with the crisis in the country. Others think that things are getting better and we can afford to sit back and either do little or do nothing at all. That's not what I see. I see enormous pain in this country. A lot of folks out of work. A lot of folks going hungry, staring at the ceiling tonight wondering, what am I going to do tomorrow? And I believe the American people are looking right now to their government for help, to do our job, to not let them down. So I'm going to act, and I'm going to act fast. I'd like to be doing it with the support of Republicans. I've met with Republicans. There's some really fine people who want to get something done, but they're just not willing to go as far as I think we have to go. I've told both Republicans and Democrats that's my preference, to work together. But if I have to choose between getting help right now to Americans who are hurting so badly and getting bogged down in a lengthy negotiation, or compromising on a bill that's up to the crisis, that's an easy choice. I'm going to help the American people who are hurting now. That's why I'm so grateful to the House and the Senate for moving so fast on the American Rescue Plan. Job number one of the American Rescue Plan is vaccines. Vaccines. The second, the American Rescue Plan is going to keep the commitment of $2,000. $600 has already gone out. $1,400 checks to people who need it. I'm not cutting the size of the checks. They're going to be $1,400, period. That's what the American people were promised.
Well, with all due respect, Mr. President, of course, $2,000 checks. That's what the American people were promised. Not $600 and then plus another $1,400. Let's be very clear about what those promises were. You said if we elect Jon Ossoff and David and Raphael Warnock down in Georgia, that $2,000 checks would go out. So I don't know who got to you on that point. I also don't know who got to you on the point about minimum wage. So minimum wage, Bernie Sanders leading the charge for $15 minimum wage per hour.
There ain't nobody in America not in the north, the south, the east, or the west, who can survive on $7.25 an hour federal minimum wage. You can't make it on $9. You can't make it on $12 an hour. And our job as the United States government is to make it clear. And Chairman Scott made this point, and others will make it as well, that in the richest country in the history of the world, if you work 40 hours a week, you should not be living in poverty.
And really, we need to be right around $23 per hour. Make no mistake about it. If you actually dive into the details, $15 an hour barely makes the grade. According to the data, in 2020, the Department of Health and Human Services set the federal poverty level at $26,000 for a family of four. That's about $12.60 per hour for a full-time worker. So $15 an hour minimum wage. Now, why do I bring up the president seems to be backtracking on this? Well, he was interviewed by Norah O'Donnell on Friday, and he cast a doubt on this minimum wage package, basically saying he doesn't think it will be allowed in there because the Senate parliamentarian won't allow it to be. He says that he doesn't think, my guess is it will not be in it. I don't think it's going to survive. So, of course, this has been pushed by Bernie Sanders, the chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, to move this forward. He's been leading the charge on moving this forward through the so-called reconciliation process. Sanders and his allies, of course, have been arguing that a higher wage would reduce the amount of federal assistance needed. Not to get too bogged down in the wonkiness of all of this, but when they're moving forward with this reconciliation process, only things related to the budget and federal debt can be a part of this process. And therefore, this minimum wage, President Biden thinks, might not be allowed in this. Ultimately, it will come down to the Senate parliamentarian. But again, Bernie Sanders is arguing that because this would qualify, it would help low-income individuals receive and then increase their taxable income, meeting the Senate parliamentarian's requirement that any reconciliation measure have an effect on the federal budget, according to Politico's reporting this morning. But President Biden seems to think that this is not going to be the case and that this will not be a part of the relief package. But on the actual size of the stimulus bill and the move by not going with Republicans on this, the president is saying, we've learned our lesson. We spent a number of months waiting on health care for Republicans back under Obamacare, back under the day, and they ultimately didn't vote for it. We let them review everything. We went over it and over and over it for 9 months, and ultimately they didn't vote for it, and it just wasted time. The reason that this speed of moving forward very quickly on the stimulus is so important is because people are still out of jobs. People are still hurting. People can't put food on their table, and evictions and unemployment it's nonstop right now. It's going to be dark days. I saw one estimate this morning that says we could take us fully 7 years at this pace to get back and recovered. So I will say this about President Biden. He is not mincing words about it. He is continuing to talk about how difficult this is. Now that he's president, he's not saying, hey, this is all rosy and nice. Everything is great. No, instead, he's actually being factual based on the data. We had our first jobs report on Friday of the Biden presidency. Anticipated that we would add 50,000 jobs. 49,000 were added. Pretty close on pace, but it's still stalled. Still pretty bad. So the president was in the White House yesterday speaking with Nancy Pelosi and others, and reporters were there, and he didn't mince words. He didn't try to give it a Trumpian spin that the economy is booming and everything is great. He was straight and said, it's stalled. It's not good. Take a listen.
We're going to be talking about the recovery package, but you saw the jobs report. There's only 6,000 private sector jobs have been created. And at that rate, it's going to take 10 years before we get to full employment. That's not hyperbole. That's a fact. We're going to be in a situation where it'll take a long, long time. And I appreciate you all coming over and the urgency with which you're moving. This is about people's lives. This is not just about numbers. This is about people's lives. People are really, I don't tell any of you, they're really hurting. People are being evicted. President Obama put me in charge of the Recovery Act, and it was hard as hell to get the votes for it to begin with, and then it was hard as hell to get even the number we got. But one thing we learned is, we can't do too much here. We can do too little. We can do too little and sputter. But again, the end result is, it's not just the macroeconomic impact on the economy and our ability to compete internationally. It's people's lives. Real live people are hurting.
And so this is interesting because remember a few weeks ago, Larry Summers, former Obama era economic advisor, came out and said the mistake would be in going too big. Remember we played that video for you? And this was a huge concern among progressives because, wait a minute, Larry Summers, who worked for Obama, here's a corporate Democrat saying that we should not go too big on stimulus. We couldn't spend this money right now. We shouldn't do it. The risk is in going too big. Those were Larry Summers' words. So you hear President Biden, he's repeated it multiple times over the past few days. He says the risk is not in going too big, it's in going too small. The exact opposite of Larry Summers. This, my friends, is encouraging. Good news from President Biden on this. And this is the third or fourth time he said it in the past few days. So I'm encouraged by that. I'm also encouraged by the fact that the administration, even economic advisors for the White House, when they're doing separate interviews on the White House lawn, they're not making up crap. Do you remember Peter Navarro under the Trump White House? Do you remember Larry Kudlow out on the White House lawn talking about how the economy is booming? Everyone's doing great. Look at Wall Street. Look at the stock market. Everyone's doing great. But the reality is that millions of people are unemployed and hurting. So here's Jared Bernstein out on the White House lawn in an interview with Poppy Harlow over on that CNN network, mainstream media. And he could have gone on there and blown smoke. Instead, what did he do? He told the truth about what's happening in the economy. This is somewhat refreshing.
These are ongoing discussions, and as Jen Psaki said yesterday, the president is very firm on making sure that people who need these checks get them, and checks in the amount of $2,000 when you add in $600 from the last plan. I think the discussion is around whether parameters change such that some of the targeting moves around, but that's an ongoing discussion as we speak.
The really big problem, Jared, though, that we saw in the jobs report this morning is that there are a lot of folks still out of work. I mean, it's like 9.9 million in the pandemic, 5.2 million women. Stimulus and one-time checks doesn't put them back to work. I wonder, would it not be a better approach, approach that makes more economic sense, to increase the amount of unemployment assistance?
By the way, listen to the mainstream media move away from stimulus checks. MSNBC the other day spent a whole 11-minute segment talking about how stimulus checks wouldn't really help the American people. Now CNN. I'm wondering if not having stimulus checks wouldn't help the American people. Let's give them unemployment instead and encourage them to get back to work. What about the people whose jobs have permanently left, Poppy? Gone. Businesses shut down. People who can't pay their bills. So I love this mainstream media. So that's why I thank you repeatedly for supporting our channel here and subscribing to our channel, as we are independent media, and we will not have to answer to these billionaires who tell us what narrative to spin. It was amazing to watch MSNBC and CNN do the same thing. It's like they've been handed notes from these guys. Here's what you have to say. No stimulus checks. But listen to how Jared handles it. Listen to how the White House handles it.
Benefits or UI aid every month until you get vaccinations up to a certain level. I know you guys are saying through September, but wouldn't more UI aid help more than a stimulus check?
Well, let me start by just going over this labor market news because it's really important. I suspect people haven't had quite a chance to fully absorb it. This morning's job report shows that the U.S. labor market has essentially stalled.
What? Where's Larry Kudlow when you need him? Everything's great. Wall Street's doing great. Here's a White House economic advisor saying the economy is stalled.
In terms of job creation, last month was 49,000 overall. That's actually a very low number for payroll job gains. But if you
again, low. This is not good.
Look at the private sector, it's only 6,000. That's essentially zero.
So he's not even trying to paint a rosy picture. He said we gained 6,000 jobs in the private sector. He's like, that's basically, you might as well just call it zero. He's rounding down.
Now, if you look over the past 3 months, Poppy, on average, because we've got ups and downs and volatility, you're talking about 29,000 jobs on average over the past 3 months. Again, that is a stall, especially when you compare it to the 1 million jobs per month that preceded it in the prior 3 months. So this is a job market that is calling out for the magnitude of intervention that's in the American Rescue Plan. But your point is very well taken. If we simply provide people with the relief they need to get through the crisis, we're definitely helping them. That's essential. But we also have to.
So he does say that the stimulus checks are essential, disagreeing with mainstream media and CNN. That's essential to get them through this pandemic. Hey, why not go bigger than this, though? $2,000 a month. That's what members of Congress are pushing for. $2,000 a month in regular stimulus till we get out of this. Let's see if those Democrats, over 50 of them now, and if you've signed my petition, you know I'll have a link below in the description. Go to morninginvest.com/sign. That's $2,000 per month until we get out of this pandemic. Let's see if we can get some traction. But he's saying until, okay, that's one piece of this, stimulus checks. Let's listen.
Attack, of course, the pandemic itself. Yeah. And in my view, this is at the heart of the ARP, of the rescue plan. That virus control, vaccine distribution. As you know, the joint crisis of the healthcare and the economic crisis are the target of this plan.
No, I know, but I'm just saying.
But let me repeat my talking point again about how stimulus checks are bad.
Why are you guys not increasing the UI
we
per
are
month?
Increasing the UI.
Well, no, I know you are. I know you are. 400 a month until September, but you're not tying it to vaccination rates.
So that's the Republican talking point. So we want to push people back to work. What if their jobs are gone?
Seems like that might make the most sense because that's when people are going to go back to work, no?
What if their jobs are gone?
I think that is important, but I also think that it's not. I think there's a lot of thinking that somehow if you're not unemployed, if you're employed, you're doing okay, and you don't need help. So that's just, in my view, I think the president's view, fundamental.
Okay. I don't think that.
So that's.
Oh, I don't think that. I just want to be clear. Here I'm just saying. I don't think that. I don't think that. Good. But it's refreshing to hear the White House defending the position of people who are really hurting, out of work. Who, yes, even if they are at work, here's been my big argument for months, which is, yes, you might still be at work, but you've had 20 hours cut off of your work week. So who cares if on paper you're still working? Guess what? Maybe a spouse has lost their job. And now because you are working and now your hours are cut, you're having to carry the load of 2 people in the household. So this artificial number that Republicans have been playing at, that if you're working, then therefore you shouldn't get stimulus and you're better off. And I'm glad to hear the president and Jared Bernstein saying, no. Poppy's like, but I'm just saying, no. Refreshing. So these have been the first few little communications tests from the White House, watching President Biden say it, watching him reiterate these positions, going against the Larry Summers of the world and the Obama administration, and then also having members of his economic team coming out and saying, no, we believe stimulus checks are very important to get people through this and additional unemployment benefits. Yes, I would love to see them get it back up to $600 a week. Why are we going to $400? Should go to $600. And I wish we had recurring stimulus every month, $2,000 per month. Maybe we'll get there. So that's one big piece of news. The other big piece of news I want to bring to you is the fact that President Biden has announced that this will be two sections of this pandemic assistance. Number one, of course, is this American Recovery Act. Number two, and he said he's excited yesterday. He said, I can hardly wait to sit down with Peter DeFazio to work on infrastructure, which will be the next big piece. He says, I want you to think of these as 2 phases. This $1.9 trillion is for vaccine distribution, stimulus checks, and unemployment. And the second piece is going to be the American Rescue Act and infrastructure plan. He says it's going to be infrastructure heavy. And he says, look, I'm excited about this second phase. It will be infrastructure heavy. And he said, I am excited to work with DeFazio on this. It's Infrastructure Week. It's been a running joke. The idea of Infrastructure Week has been a running joke in the Trump administration. He promised in 4 years he would have an infrastructure bill. Never happened. He talked about Infrastructure Week coming. It never happened. He says now we're going to start to see the outlines here for infrastructure to actually have a chance to move through Congress. Pete Buttigieg as transportation and veterans transportation chair in DeFazio, them coming together to put outlines of new bridges and roads and infrastructure across the United States, high-speed broadband as well for those all across the United States, so we can actually catch up with the rest of the world and stop acting like a third world country. So there is bipartisan support for an infrastructure plan from Republicans and Democrats. And look, let's make no mistake about it. People love infrastructure plans because all of these members of Congress get to go home to their constituents and say, hey, you know that new bridge that we just built? Yeah, that was me. So it's a very visual thing for members of Congress to show their constituents the new park that you've built, the railway station that you've built, that you've commissioned from the help of Congress. So there's bipartisan support for infrastructure. So I'm encouraged today. I'm not encouraged about the minimum wage piece. We'll keep our eye on that as the Senate parliamentarian weighs in on all of these things. But that's the very latest, that we now have the green light to move forward on $1.9 trillion stimulus package. And a new infrastructure bill will be forthcoming. Hopefully in the next few weeks, we can start to see the outlines of that. So a lot of moving pieces here. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell notification so you'll be notified as soon as we release another video. You should also check out my other video, if you missed it, on that $15,000 per family plan under Mitt Romney's new amendment to the stimulus package. You've got to check out that video. We will link it up right here, so go check it out. We'll see you next time, everyone.